You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marni Battista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Ashley Radzat. How to raise successful kids without overparenting. Ladies, this is a juicy episode on so many levels. I'm here with you to talk about parenting your teenagers. I have so many clients that are literally like, what the actual fuck is going on? I think it's so much harder now than it was when my kids were teenagers. Now they're in their mid-20s. I think it is a really important topic and that we need to life check ourselves. And so I'm super excited that I have here today Ashley Radzat. She's a professional who combines her wealth of knowledge with a personal touch. She's got a Bachelor of Science degree in Human Development and Family Studies. She's a credentialed California multi-subject teacher. She's been doing education for 20 years. She has degrees in Waldorf education, Kim John Payne's 3 Streams, Newfield Institute, restorative justice, and she's a certified life coach. But what's really exciting is that she raised 2 amazing daughters, and now she has taken her experience doing that and working with teenagers as a middle school teacher to bring that together to help parents parent better. And as a consultant, she brings her distinctive perspective to help parents and teens navigate the journey successfully, because we all want our kids to not be fucked up.
Yeah. Yes, it's true.
So here's the other really interesting tidbit, just because I think it brings it full circle about parenting is, so for those of you who know my story, I met Ashley because I was dating her ex-husband, and I was a mess and he was a jerk, and I reached out to her and she was like, I don't even know you, but you deserve better than this. And this girl right here literally changed my life. And she said, I just did this Hoffman process thing. I think you should do it. And how does this impact our kids? Was because in that moment, and you probably don't know this, but I remember thinking like, I can't do this. I don't have the money. I don't have the this. I don't have the that. What I realized was that I really couldn't at that time do it for me. But when I thought about the fact that I had 3 kids who at the time were like, 4 and 8 and, 12, I was like, I'm literally going to teach this to them if I don't get my own shit together. And so they became my why for really going on the whole journey. And so I think that's so amazing and full circle that now that's what you're doing.
It's incredible. I didn't know that you actually listen to the most important part of your life, which was when we choose to become parents, we don't realize how many choices that we have to make for them. Everybody says it, but when it comes down to it, when you're actually presented, it can kind of feel like a life or death situation, I know that's crazy to say, but it's true.
It does. And it's, I was just talking to a client who's thinking about, should she have kids or not, and she's like, you can't return them if you don't like it. I mean, in theory, some do, but in theory, all right.
Right. No, you're stuck with them for better or worse.
Yeah. But we do, if this is you, and we want to really, most parents want their kids to have it better and easier than they did, in a time that, and this I think is so funny, and I want to start here, which is, and in that desire, you're parenting your kids in a time that is so different from the time that you were raised. And so you want it to be better, but it's different. So let's just start with a state of the union, middle schoolers, teenagers. For those who don't really understand what it's like, What is it like out there in the wild west of being a young person today?
It's so interesting what's going on right now, because teens have more access to the world than they've ever had before. I mean, the first time we ever even televised a war was Vietnam, and we went from that wasn't very long ago now to the kids are literally watching the Ukraine war streamed. So they are in it and they are getting information that we didn't have to see. And what is actually really dangerous about that is that the teenage brain is very different than any other time in our life. Through human development, there are 3 times when your brain is changing most than it's ever done. And that's in utero, when you're between the age of 2 and 3, and then as a teen. And so as a teen, all of this change is happening, and your brain can only handle so much information so that we can process. We have to learn how to process. And our brains aren't made to process the amount of information that's coming in. And we also, in many societies, we don't have the risk-taking available that shows children that they are capable and that they can do healthy risk-taking activities. So the kids are taking on their own risks and they're choosing, drugs and alcohol and sex and things like that. So that's different because we're actually overparenting. And so our kids aren't getting opportunities to go out and see, if that stove's hot and I touch it, will there be something there? They don't get that opportunity because the parents are just holding them no, the stove is hot. You won't touch it. Believe me. We move on. And so the world is kind of just believe me. And we're not wired to believe that anybody. We're
right.
wired to test things out. And so the overparenting, the overstimulation of information, the abundance of information is causing teens to withdraw within themselves. And they're becoming extremely isolated in a time when we have more connection than ever. We're more isolated than ever for teens, and teens are supposed to be very social. The part of their brain that is most social and all of that, social interest starts to turn on when their brain is developing. And so they are looking for social experiences, but the feedback they're getting is that nobody really goes out there and has social experiences. So then they're confused and they don't trust what they feel and what they see. And so they're kind of walking around in this fog of confusion.
So what sounds fun.
Yay!
Exactly. So
don't you want to be a teen?
I know. Well, the thing is for every generation, right, it's different. And we had our, it's like that. So if you're listening to this, whenever the Olympics are on, when we're recording it, and I just saw this dude who's just did this pole vaulting thing and he broke all the records, and it's beyond what we could imagine. And we all know about the 6-minute mile and all that. Right. Mm-hmm. And so every generation, it's fuck, this is really, really hard. Right. I try to remember that, but it's different in that we don't know what it's like to be them. And it feels like this overparenting is interesting vis-a-vis most of the people that are raising those kids that are overparenting, or maybe even underparented, are latchkey kids, parenting kids, overcorrecting.
Yes, exactly. It is. The pendulum always swings from one generation to the next. That's just the way that it works in parenting. We're always trying to, for better or worse, either accept or reject our parents' tools or lack thereof, and do it better is what we're hoping. What is interesting with parents nowadays is that we have more knowledge than ever, but we have no wisdom. So what I have personally experienced is in the parents that I work with, and the teens that I work with, especially as you start moving from the East Coast to the West Coast, we become more and more isolated in our parenting journey, we were supposed to raise children in a village.
Right.
Like
okay.
that's how our biologically, like that's what our biology says, is that we are supposed to have people helping us. But the more we move towards that independence, our parents aren't with us anymore. We don't really have aunts and uncles around us. The wisdom from our parents is lacking. And so we turn to books, and we turn to people that have all the masters and the, you know, the PhDs, but they may not have children. You know, they just write and they study. And so when one book comes out, we're reading that and we're just, you know, trying to soak it all in. And then a new book comes out and we're like, oh, well, now I have to read this book. And we're forgetting to actually listen to our own values and our own inner wisdom, because we second guess ourselves and we think we're not good enough. And our natural tendency then is to overcompensate. And that's where we're overparenting, is because we're overcompensating for the fear of what if my child ends up having an experience I had? What if my child isn't good enough? You know, the number one state of being that parents wish children will be when they grow up is happy. And I don't think that's fair, because imagine like sitting across the table from somebody whose life was happy all the time. Like,
what's not
that's
real.
not interesting.
Yeah.
No, I have nothing to say to somebody who just has a happy life. I'm like, so how's the weather? You know, like,
yeah,
there's nothing there for me. If I sit across the street from across the table from somebody who's striving, who has gone through something, who is, working on just becoming a better version of who they were yesterday, I can relate to them, you know? And so I think a lot of these parents are missing the point that they're good enough and they're strong enough and they're capable enough, but they are so overcompensating that they're not listening to the child that's in front of them, the teen that's in front of them, who says like, I'm actually a really good kid, but you're worrying about my past, or your past and my future. And have I ever done anything that makes you upset? You know, like, no, you're just worrying about it.
Oh my gosh. So let's talk about, so I would love to have you give some examples of what is overparenting. What does that look like? What are some examples? How can people recognize if they're doing it?
Yeah. So overparenting is nowadays what it looks like is the parents are on the playground. They're literally standing there holding them as they're coming down the slide. And that extends all the way through life. So they're standing at the kindergarten door and they're waiting outside the door for about an hour, making sure their child doesn't come out. Then they'll move at being a teacher for so long. You'd see the parents all gathered there waiting, just assuming their child was going to have a hard time and come running out, you know, just in case I'm going to be here. And so then that overparenting goes to, well, my child can't play in the front yard because they're going to get kidnapped. So they can't be there. I have to be there with them. And then they can't go to the park like that's just down the street because that's unsafe. And so what is happening is the actual message that the parents are delivering to the child is that you are not capable enough to be in the world.
Yeah.
And we all know what it feels like then to be adults like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And teens have it in a difficult way where they're supposed to be learning how capable they are, because the way that teens develop at this age is they turn away from their parents. They don't need their voices from their parents anymore. And they turn towards new voices. I mean, it saves us from, you know, having inbreeding, really.
Right,
I mean,
right.
you know, in a crazy way, like you got to leave the nest because you can't stay here.
Right.
You know,
right.
so they're trained, you know, their brain is telling them go seek new voices and go out into the world and try new things. But when we overparent, they're coming up against the message of, but you don't know how and you can't do it and it's too scary. And so the teen is now in this state of being right now today where they're afraid to drive.
Yeah, I see so many kids not getting their licenses anymore.
No, it's too scary. I mean, their parents have, like, without knowing it, kind of foundationally taught them that the world is a scary place. You know, we have 24-hour news cycle. All we are fed is fear. And so if they're going to get in a car accident and it costs too much and they won't get a job, why would they ever learn to drive? You know?
Well, they can Uber, I mean, right?
Exactly. And that's safer, except if you're the parent that thinks that that's unsafe. And you know what's actually interesting is we are more safe now than we've ever been in history.
No, for sure. I mean, I was telling my kids the other day, like, one of them went on a road trip, and I was like, so literally I lived in Iowa and we drove to Colorado, like when I was little, and my parents built, they put a piece of plywood on the back seat to make it flat and let me crawl around on the plywood while they were driving their big ass car, smoking cigarettes with no seatbelts.
Oh, yeah. Windows up.
Yeah, going 80 miles an hour, you know, while I was like free playing like it was a fucking playpen.
Yes, I know.
It's crazy. I lived, but a bad idea, but.
Yeah. And, you know, we're not saying that's
bad.
You have to be that extreme. We learn and we do better. What is interesting, though, right now is that there's things that parents are doing out of fear. We're living in a fear-based society, and it's affecting our teens. And they come to me, and most of them come to me because they feel broken. They feel like they've been seeing therapists since they were 4 years old.
Right.
They are foundationally trained that they're broken, not because the therapist is bad. I'm all for therapy, but I'm also really glad I'm not a therapist, because my job is to prove to every single teen and to lay out the evidence that they're capable, they're successful, they're courageous, they're brave, and they can do hard things. And that's why I like that, like, teens nowadays have many options. And so if we can find different voices, there's amazing coaches out there that are giving these words of wisdom to our kids, you know, these mentors. Kids don't have a lot of mentors nowadays. And so, especially teens, and because they're not wanting to listen to their parents anymore, and they're turning to social media to get their advice, it leaves them feeling unsteady.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So one interesting thing I think is what you said about like trusting your kid, right? And so I know everyone listening is like, Ashley, is there a magic number for social media, right? Like the age, when do you get a phone? When do you go online? I have a friend who has a 15-year-old boy and who has great grades and he's an athlete. And she's like, he's playing games too much. I'm like, is he? I don't know. He's like, getting straight A's and doing sports. Like, I don't know what the answer to that is. Is there a number that parents should subscribe to?
Well, there's a lot of people in education, a lot of people in human development are really seeing that there actually is a big difference between somebody who's going through puberty and somebody who's, you know, before puberty and after puberty, and because of what brain development does and how we can handle the world, you know, I mean, the whole front of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, isn't really working until around 25. Right. Which is why you can't drive a car. You can't rent a car until your prefrontal cortex works. And so, which is interesting. So that being said, there's a big push, like the author Jonathan Haidt says that he's pushing for no smartphone until high school.
Love it.
So flip phones are totally fine. There's no evidence that shows that they screw anybody up. We all had phones. It's just now a mobile version. So flip phones are fine. And they're pushing for 16 for social media because you've started puberty for many. I love it. And that you have more access to brain overview, kind of holding the big picture, making good decisions, understanding perspective. That's just like the lights are just barely dim, but they're coming on.
Okay.
And so 16 is when they're saying social media, and that includes YouTube, which is interesting.
Right. Because
people don't realize YouTube that's a social media.
They're doing it for their homework help, right?
Yep. And they're making videos. These little kids are making videos, and the parents are putting them on YouTube, and it's amazing because they don't see the effects. Like, what was actually really interesting is that my oldest, Cobain, she did a test. So she started playing on her phone a child's game of like Candy Crush.
Yep.
And as she was playing it, she got sex ads, and she had put in, I'm under 12. And she got all these sex ads. So then she went and signed up for a different kind of, game online and put, I'm over 12, and never received one media, like any of those sexual ads or anything. It was all to the kids under 12. And that just blew my mind that we're so trusting, and speaking of like it being safer, the reason that it's safer right now is because the people that we have to worry most about are actually moving online. They're not driving around anymore.
Right.
They have full access to your kid because your kid's watching YouTube, or your kid's talking to some random person on Discord, talking about video games. So there's not necessarily a magic age, but anything under puberty really shouldn't be happening. And talking about brain development, which is just like my excitement. You only get 7 years to develop your imagination. The first 7 years is how long you get to develop your imagination. So if we're looking at the future and the jobs these people need to be able to, work in, we want creative thinkers. We want people that have amazing imaginations. And so keeping technology away from children that are young is really important, because then they can have their own thoughts. They don't have to have a Disney version of a princess.
Right.
A princess is whatever this child wants it to be, and those are the people that become the great leaders, because they're not just following the norm. So yeah, the brain is a really important thing to think about.
Right.
And I think that, all that being said, also with kids and video games and all of that, it's, of course, they're all individual, but the FDA now is saying that social media is harming children. And when we learned about cigarettes and harming our children, we took them away.
Right.
And parents are having a hard time making their child unhappy.
That was my next question, because, I was at dinner. Where was I? I was in Portugal, on a beach, at a little beach cafe. And there was a lot of families. There were a lot of families, and I want to say 2 to 5 year olds were parked with iPads. Yeah. Just sitting at a dinner table or a lunch or a breakfast, just staring at the phone. Okay. So now flash forward, you raised your kid that way. I get it. We all had the digital babysitter. I understand.
Sure.
How do you because I've had people in my family, in my in-law family, be like, I can't take it away. I can't, right? So what do we do? Because I believe we probably can, but how do you do that? What does it look like? What are the words you would use?
Mm-hmm. Well, I try to tell the parents when they ask, would it be hard for you if your child came home and said, I want a glass of wine, and they were 7? You're like, no. Assuming it's an American,
right.
Not European, right? No, or heroin. I want some heroin. Well, no. Yeah. So what it comes down to is that we have very strong values about what is healthy for a child. We know that social media and the phone is not healthy for a child, and it is starting to outweigh this feeling that my child will be broken if they're upset. And so the first thing we have to do is do our work and realize that our job is not to be our child's friend.
Yeah.
Like that's great when they're in their 20s, right? That's a fun stage. But our job is to help them practice for the real world. And the real world does not give them a lot of happiness, unfortunately.
Right.
You know, it's like these beautiful moments that we get that make it all worth it. But we're striving up that mountain for most of our life, you know, and we become really proud of ourselves. So when we start to do our own work and we realize that I can make my child cry by taking this away and still be okay with who I am as a parent and know that I'm doing hard things that makes my child a better person, it reminds us what our values are. And we just keep having these affirmations, these positive affirmations of, I am doing a good job. I'm teaching my child what life is about. I'm taking away the phone. And it's kind of like taking away the pacifier. You say, you know, for media, the kids become addicted. So you're like, okay, I'm going to give myself 2 weeks of absolute hell where they don't have access to it. I'm showing them, welcome to the world of boredom.
Right.
Most of these kids don't know what it means anymore. Welcome to the world of boredom. And you like, get ready for just hell for the next 2 weeks. And you don't give it back until you have an agreement of you can have, you know, a smartphone in high school with this many hours on it. And I'm watching it because my job is to teach you how to navigate it. You don't just hand over the car keys and say, good luck. I mean, this is a tool.
Yep.
And so we use it as a tool. We don't use it. Nobody should have that much access to entertainment. It's just craziness, you know?
So true.
So it's not really you coming up with the right words to say to a child. It's you having the right words to say to yourself. Because once you are really clear about what your values are, come hell or high water, you're going to go after your values and make sure your child gets that. It doesn't matter what you say. You won't even pick the fight. You'll be like, I'm taking it, cry all you want. I'll be in here if you want to hug. You know, like
that, and
this is hard.
That's so true. Yeah, I remember having to have one of those conversations with my kids when she was like 14, because that's a really hard age, and just being like,
yeah,
I would love to be your friend, but that's not my job right now. So you're going to hate me, and that's okay. Like I have to,
and it hurts.
It really does. It does hurt. I think that one thing, and I know you've done with this with your kids in their 20s now, like ultimately what I hear you saying is we have to teach them the skills, and correct me if I'm wrong, so that they can ultimately self-manage and self-regulate. Yeah. Because that's what we have to do. And we kind of suck at it a lot of the time too, right? But I hear my kids saying like, I was on Instagram too much. I deleted it. Yeah. I needed to get rid of TikTok for 6 months because I was my algorithm was fucking with my head, right? So then if we reverse engineer it, what you're saying is they're not just going to wake up one day and be like, oh, now I know how.
Right. So no, we have to help them build those skills. The studies are showing that all the kids wish they didn't have it, but because we're tribal and we all need to fit in to make sure we survive in our brain, we all are doing it. But if we removed it, if we made phone free schools, then everybody is free to just learn to build the skills of being social, learning how to be uncomfortable when you don't know what to say to the person next to you. Those are all lifelong skills that you don't have to practice if you have a phone to look at. And so then you end up in college and you're calling your mom trying to figure out, like, I have no friends. I don't know what to do. It's like, well, put your phone down, you know? And so that the lifing is the part that the kids really want. And that is where we as parents can come in, or at least finding mentors in our children's lives, because they don't really like to listen to us. But aunts, uncles, coaches, you know, I mean, I work with as a mentor, and they just want the skills, they want the tools to be able to life so that they're not dependent on their phone. They know, I love teenagers because they know how great life can be. They know what they want. They just don't know how to get it. And so far they haven't received the wisdom that they trust to make it worth it to go out there and try to be embarrassed, to try hard things. You know, everything's hard. Just choose your hard. And so that's where they get the opportunity. If we build that relationship with them, if the phone is in the way of the relationship, it's really hard for them to move forward, because we are their foundation of what the world is like as an adult. So a lot of parents have to check themselves when they're on the phone a lot too, because they're modeling the behavior.
Yeah. I mean, totally. I remember going to something, I can't remember what it was, some like group family thing, and or maybe it was friends, but someone else had like teenagers. My kids were older at the time, and we were all sitting around the group and everyone was talking. And I get that, like, being a kid is hard and awkward and you're around, like my kids were there, whatever. And I remember just this one kid that literally was on her phone the entire time. She never even looked up. She never engaged. She never tried to talk. She just was like, these aren't my people. I don't know anyone. I'm just going to be on my phone the whole time. It's tragic.
It is, because she probably didn't want to, but she didn't know there was an alternative.
Right.
I mean, I am such a believer that these kids are amazing people. They just don't have the tools. And so they do what they've seen done, and they do children, they live in their feeling world and their feeling realm, and they move out of their feelings. So if it feels uncomfortable, they're going to do whatever possible to stay comfortable. And what our job right now in this difficult time is to teach them that they can do things when they are uncomfortable. There's a difference between being uncomfortable and being unsafe. And so do it uncomfortable, be uncomfortable, go out and do life. You're not unsafe. It's just normal. We have to normalize that as humans. We get embarrassed and worried and nervous all the time. It doesn't mean we have anxiety. It means we're just human, So we have to normalize the human experience and get rid of, I need to make sure that my child is happy. I want my child to be resilient. I want my child to have grit. I want my child to understand what happiness is in contrast of what happiness isn't. That's the only way you can learn what it is. And that's what I want for my children. And I'm not saying it's easy. Like, it breaks my heart when they're hurting.
Yeah, of course.
I'm still working on trying to figure out how to pacify myself when, what did I do wrong? Like, how can I help? And they don't need my help, especially in the 20s. Yeah. You have to ask for help. If they want advice, you have to ask.
Yeah.
If we can give it. But it physically hurts. That never goes away.
Yeah, it doesn't.
But it kind of goes back to what you were saying about the why that you went to Hoffman. It's when it comes to the children and what they're getting, what they're looking forward to in their life and what they have to learn. That's why we do uncomfortable things, because they have to know this, they have to be able to be better than us.
Yeah.
They can't have less skills than us.
Right. Well, yeah. So let me ask you this. Do you think that, because I see there's the phones, I think there's the age old, drugs and alcohol. Mm-hmm. And then there's I feel like anxiety is a whole separate thing. Because I would go into my kids' sororities and I would I would do a program on dating and relationships, whatever. And my age range of my kids is 8 years. So this was my one daughter graduated college in 2016. I mean, a long time ago, right? And the talking about anxiety and being anxious, and that is just very common. And so are they anxious? Are we over labeling? Are we simplifying it? Is it good? Now we're just all know we're anxious. Talk to me about that. Cause I would imagine having a kid who's just, I'm anxious, leave me alone, or I'm depressed, leave me alone, or whatever it is. How do you deal with that? Cause that seems like a whole new thing.
Yeah. I would say that is probably the biggest issue that I work on. Sorry. Yeah, I would say that was probably the biggest issue that I work on with parents and teens right now. They're always coming saying, I have anxiety. My child has anxiety. I don't know how to get through my anxiety. So I am not the norm when it comes to talking about feelings and therapy and all that stuff. I it might get me in trouble, but I think that we are creating it. I think that we are creating a society of kids with anxiety because when they are 6 years old, we're getting down there and we're saying, oh, tell me how you're feeling. Tell me what's bothering you. Oh, he hit you. That must have made you feel really scared. And I'm all for validating experiences. So it can be sometimes a gray area. Like, I want a child validated to not feel like they're shamed for having emotions.
Right.
But we're spending too much time on the feeling being the most important thing. Mm-hmm. And we're not letting them know that, yes, you can feel like that. And let's keep moving forward.
Right. Okay.
Well, you are strong enough to keep going. So where we have separated is that, we've got the bow of the boat moving towards making sure we're validating our kids, which is really important. But we've separated the whole back of the boat of actually letting them know all the reasons why they're courageous and brave and resilient and have grit. Because for the kids that are showing up that are feeling nervous, we all are feeling nervous, right? It's just they've been told that they have anxiety disorders now or something. And so instead of just talking over and over and over again about how they have anxiety and how did you make it through and all of that stuff, and all the talk therapy, I'm a big believer that you have to do exposure therapy. You have to expose them to life. It doesn't have to be therapy. It's just lifing,
Right.
So then you're saying, okay, so you got nervous today, call it anxiety, whatever you want, when you went to school. And I'm so proud of you because that was really brave for you to be able to go to school and you stayed there all day and you are stronger than you realize. And that's amazing. And you let it go and you move on. And now that child's inner voice is your inner voice. And then they're out on the soccer field and they didn't score the goal and the team's mad at them and they're feeling anxious and they don't want to play anymore. And so you're saying, yeah, it's really hard when everybody's really yelling at you. That must have felt awful. So tomorrow we'll try it again. Let's go practice. Let's go see if we can do better. We have to work hard at learning new skills. It doesn't come easy and it's supposed to feel like this. And it's okay because this pushes us to try harder. It shouldn't push us to retreat. And that's what we're teaching them is that if it's hard, we shouldn't feel that way and we should retreat. And so I think this anxious nation that is happening is parents really doing the best they can, but they've separated the boat, the bow from the stern. It's just not in cahoots anymore. And we have to acknowledge, and we also have to build their capacities and prove to them like, okay, here's the shopping list. I'm going to be over here shopping around in the grocery store. Here's 7-year-old. I want you to go find the milk and the cheese and the bread and find me with it. That makes a child feel really good. Right. They've just wandered the whole store. They've got the stuff that's needed. Like, they're like, I did hard things. Or you're telling your 9-year-old, pay for it, get the change. I'll stand right here, and so you're building those capacities so that they realize how strong they are, validating their emotions, but not spending all this time seeping, and like just sort of dipping it like a tea bag of let's just spend time in these feelings of worry. And then let's go to a therapist and let's make sure they spend all this time.
Right.
We're naturally so capable of moving on. Like feelings change like that. So why not work with nature? Like, yeah, you're having a hard time. They're going to forget about it soon. And the more that you remind them, we keep going.
Well, you're projecting your own shit on them. I'm a fan of like, now what, so what, now what? Like,
yeah.
Right. Like, yes, it's hard, but for adults too, right? Like, yes. Yeah. And, we have to like not let our feelings define us because we are not our feelings. We're just having an experience of those feelings. But I think with a lot of, and also I noticed, we could talk for hours, by the way. I noticed too, like when I went to the sorority, and because we were talking about something else, that there's a lot of labels, and this must come from social media. Like they can define, they have a lot of words, right? Like this trauma or gaslighting or whatever the thing, right? And they can name it and they can use it and they're smart. But they don't know what to do with it. And no one's teaching them how to move forward. They're just saying, oh, great, you have a feeling, you can name it, you know what happened. But like, they're not ever learning how to like blow past that and be resilient and resourceful. Right. So last thing, if you could wave your magic wand and give someone who's listening, like that one piece of advice, that is a small step that might start to make a difference with their kids, what would that be?
I was talking about this before. I think the biggest thing is when a child transitions from pre-adolescence to adolescence, we have to change. Every single stage of development, we have to change. And just because they're the same height as us does not mean that they have the same capacities as us. So we have to change our parenting to realize that our children are in a place of trying to learn who they are. How can we assist them in learning who they are? The best way to do that is to try to get their perspective. Get them to tell what their ideas are. Instead of solving their problems, ask them, well, what did you do then? How are you going to do it later? And then asking, do you need my advice? Because sometimes we're offering advice, which makes a teenager feel like they don't have the ability to do it and that we don't trust them to be able to do it. And so if we are really helping them, we're like kind of digging down there. We're like an archaeologist, like digging, trying to find their own wisdom. And we're trying to ask them questions so that they can bring it out. If they can process it out loud, they realize how capable they are. Yeah. And our job is just to help them find all the colors that they're about to paint the world with. So that's all that we have to do, is help them find their own wisdom and stop putting our wisdom in unless they ask for it.
Oh, I love that. Oh, and as my kids get older, I have to keep doing all this stuff, right? I'm like, it's like they still have to learn like we had to learn. And it's like, I think the thing that what you said, and I want to reiterate is, like if I keep doing a good job in teaching them that they're great, then they'll start to trust themselves. And then I can start to trust them because they're making good decisions for themselves. Because I don't think any teenager goes, I want to like do drugs, get in trouble, flunk out of school. Like no one starts out with that intention, right? And so what I hear you saying is like, we have to remind them that they're capable by treating them like they're capable.
Exactly. And and set up the world to show them they're capable, give them responsibilities, set expectations that are doable, and then help them figure out how to reach those small goals, because they want to do it. They want to do it really well. It's my most favorite population. They're just so ready. Teens are the ones that have always changed the world. We're getting in the way, so help them.
It's so true. Oh my God. Ashley, you're amazing. So where can people find out more about you and get into your world?
Yeah. So I work with parents of teens in all ages. And then more specifically, I work with teens, and I do that in person or virtually at radzatconsulting.com. And they can reach out. I also do parent support groups and, try to help in all those different ways.
I love it. I had a parenting coach when my kids since they were little, and my kids are like, you did such a good job. And I was like, honestly, Betsy helped me. Otherwise I would have fucked it up.
Yes. I know.
Literally.
I know. And like, it's so nice to have a parenting coach because they're there to remind you. They see what you don't see. They see how good you're doing. And we are so mean to ourselves, us as parents, we're just so mean to ourselves that you need somebody there cheering for you and then being like, just like a coach who's helping with like score soccer, or whatever, like get better at something. The manuals are knowledge. It's not wisdom. You have the wisdom. You just need somebody else there helping you one step at a time. Just like the teens, really.
Oh my God, that's so
We're
great.
all teens at heart.
I love it. So radzatconsulting.com. If you're listening, it's radzat.com. But you should all be on YouTube, obviously, seeing how amazing we are.
Yeah.
And that we could be sisters. And that's probably why we dated we're with the same guy. Because
I know.
he just liked dark-haired beauties. Now we both are so much happier.
Thank God.
Best, worst thing that happened to both of us. I love
Seriously.
being in community with you. I'm so happy for you, and I love the work that you're doing. Ladies, all the links to Ashley's work are in the show notes. You can find me on Instagram, marnibattista_.com. Remember, listen to this. Share it with a friend who's struggling. This is a great opportunity. Look, you're life checking your kid all the time. I think this is a you show, right? Life check yourself and start getting into the thinking of what could I do better? How could I do it differently? And I bet your kid will start to be a happier, healthier, resilient human. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning into today's show. Do you ever wake up feeling like you've already run a marathon before the day even begins? Does your coffee need a coffee just to get through the morning? Well, I feel you, and I've been there. Burnout isn't just a buzzword. It's a reality for far too many of us, especially as we navigate life over 40. But here's the good news. You don't have to accept feeling perpetually drained as your new normal. I'm excited to introduce my new flagship, Live Life on Your Terms program. This isn't just another Band-Aid fix or a fluffy self-care promise. This is about real transformation. We're diving deep to tackle the root cause of your burnout, regulate your nervous system, lower your cortisol and adrenaline, and rewire your neural pathways to transform how you feel in your life from the inside out. Imagine this, waking up energized, not by caffeine, but by excitement and passion for the day ahead. Picture yourself managing stress with grace and finding joy in moments big and small. That's not just a dream or a someday. It's within your reach now. So, if you like what you've heard and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working together, here's what I want you to do next. Email me at vip@datingwithdignity.com. Don't wait for one day. Make today your day one so we can create your next chapter. I'm Marni, and I'll talk to you soon.